Well, hey, assuming it's gonna last that long. Give him the year. Give him the year.
All right. Recording in progress. All right, it is now 7 o'clock. I call to order our council meeting for November 4th, 2024. For all those that are able to, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With that, can you take roll for us, Carrie?
Good evening, Councilmember Hall.
Present. Is this working?
Yes.
Oh, you heard it. Okay.
Yep. Councilmember Dowdy.
Here.
Councilmember Burke.
Here.
Councilmember Rounds.
Here.
Councilmember Freimark.
Here.
Councilmember Houston. And Councilmember Friend.
Here.
Okay, with that, communications for items not on the agenda. I did not see anyone signed up.
But I would like to say something.
Miss Smith, come on up.
No.
Okay. Lots of people kind of grumble about Gun Club Road and how speeders are coming down there, but I would like to thank the Woodland Police Department and the Public Works for putting up a sign, and it is very nice to have up there. They're not taking a picture of you, by the way, either. So thank you, guys, for doing that.
So when she says sign, just so everyone knows, there's a speed patrol sign.
The speed limit's still 75, right?
JJ? So, and I apologize, Keith. Come on up, sir. Items not on the agenda, you were on here. My bad.
Hi, I just wanted to remind everybody that the Planters Days theme contest is available if you go to the Planters Days website, planters-days.com. The link is there. Please enter, and you could win $100. I think the link is also on the Planters Days Facebook page. It's June 19th through the 22nd this year, and we're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Excellent. Any questions, comments for Keith? Thank you, sir. Anyone online or in the room for comments not on the agenda? Now is your chance. All right. With that, we will go to agenda approval.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Discussion? With that, Carrie?
Councilmember Friend.
Aye.
Councilmember Freimark.
Aye.
Councilmember Burke.
No. Aye.
Councilmember Hall.
Aye.
Councilmember Freimark.
Aye.
And Councilmember Dowdy.
Aye. You
Oh.
forgot me.
Rounds. Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Thank you.
Excellent. With that, it is now 7:03, and we will go into workshop. So, let's have a little conversation here. Lord, our council bylaws allow us to go to 10 o'clock. I see us probably going pretty long here. So just so we're aware, workshop here is so that we can go through line by line, have discussion on the budget. I look forward to community coming up, speaking. If you have questions, I look forward to council having dialogue. All of our budget holders are here. Amanda isn't here. She's still on maternity leave, but I certainly from the clerk's office can help out answer questions there. And then from there is where we will go into public hearing. So it's my recommendation to not increase property taxes 1%. And to do something like that, you're required to have a public hearing. Typically, public hearings are citizens come up, there's no council discussion. I want to have conversation, dialogue, and discussion from council and the community on that budget before all of a sudden public comment comes straight at us about the 1% recommendation. So bear with us on that, and away we go. There are presentations out in the lobby for anyone that doesn't have one. Council members have them here. It'll just be online, and away we go. All right, so first slide here is something that we've looked at previously. Let's go to the second slide. And if you can't hear me or whatever, let me know. I'm happy to speak up because again, it's all dialogue here. So this slide here, wanted everyone to see what our general fund balance does. Our park fund, our street fund, and our general reserve fund are funded out of the general fund. So we do not have money that sits there in a reserve for the park and the street. What we put in there, what we fund out of the general fund goes there. So here shows what our ending fund balance is. You can see in 2021, 2022, those were because we had HARPA funds and from COVID-19. And then you see we have a little bit of drop in 2023, goes up a little bit in 2024, and in 2025, now that we're going to go line by line and scrub this, you'll see that we have repairs to the foundation over at the community center and also a new roof on the Horseshoe Park. Those are things that are coming out of here. So you'll see we still make an increase over what we started here with, but it's a year-over-year decrease. All right? Questions on this page? Total revenues, next slide. This here is a view, high level, that shows where our revenues all come in from. And you can see down there at the bottom, the orange, kind of a mustard brown color online, it shows that's the general fund. And we'll get into what those revenues are. That's our property taxes, our sales tax, that type of funding. Okay? Just wanted to show where we are at. You can see 2024 had a budget of $33 million. 2025 is a budget of $37 million. And we'll get into that. We have a fully balanced budget. $37 million comes in, $37 million is what we are spending. We are not projecting any layoffs. We are not projecting any reductions in staff, okay? Or increased taxes from our community, okay? Again, I ask if there's questions, comments online, raise your hand, or if there's anyone in the room. Next slide. Here's our expenditures. You'll see 37,082 comes back to a balanced budget. Next slide. Here's our general revenues, okay? Pie chart that shows where we get our dollars, and on the right-hand side actually shows the dollars. So the general fund has a funding source of $10 million. You can see we had that $2 million beginning fund balance that were projected here at the end of 2024. And you'll see that we have property taxes that come in. I'm asking for no increase in property taxes, the 1%, that we would forego that this year. Sales tax, franchise fees, utility taxes, and away we go, and then fines, fees, and assessments, and we'll get into that. We have Travis will talk to us about impact fees and things like that, and we've actually built a budget where we can see exactly number of houses we're projecting to be built, number of sewer connects, and all of that. So we'll get into that detail here. So, any questions on the general fund?
I was wondering, with all of the bridge construction, do you think that you lost a significant amount of revenue because of that backup?
So revenue stayed about consistent. We lost people coming in using our Walmart. However, our residents stayed in town and used Walmart. So it was a net neutral as we assess what we got in sales tax revenue.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Okay, any questions on this? All right, so here is our general revenue funds. And if you go all the way down through this, and we're gonna go line by line, you'll see that this comes back to our $10,065,000, which ties back to our pie chart. What I thought was interesting here is we have 2022, 23 actuals, then we have a budget for 2024, and then a 2025 proposed budget. And then the far right-hand column is what our increase or decrease is. So if it's a positive number, that's an increase to the budget. Negative is a decrease, okay? So for property taxes, sales tax, brokered natural gas taxes, and the sales tax criminal, that budget there was assessed and created by assuming a flat 3% increase. And you say, why did we get 3% increase there, Mayor? If you look at cost of goods sold, gross national product, you look at some of these assessments out there, it's around 4 to 5%. So if the cost of a flashlight at Walmart goes from $10 to $11, the sales tax stays the same percent. However, it's a 3% cost, and away we go. So that is how we got to that 3% increase for the sales tax type revenues. And if you go to your electric tax, natural gas tax, telephone tax, cell phone tax, though, we kept those on a 3-year average of actuals and budget. So if I looked at what 2022, 2023 actuals, and 2024 budget was, we took a 3-year average of those to come up with a budget number. Does that make sense? So I tried to put a little bit of logic into what is going up based on cost of goods sold, and the other is based on trend use of citizens. So for example, cell phone tax. All of us have cell phones. There is a little bit of a tax that we all pay unless somebody registers their phone outside of the city limits. I figure that usage will stay consistent. Okay? So if you just continue going down this, you can see a little bit of increases and decreases. There's nothing there that is just a huge increase. It's the sales tax is the biggest for $80,000. Sales tax is projecting this year to be a little bit slightly up from our 2.7 million, and you can see 2022 was 2.7 million, 2024 budget was 2.7 million, actuals in 2023 was 2.83. So that 2.805 million, can you go back up, is in line there. Okay? So I want people to realize we're not raising taxes, it's based on consumer spending. Okay? Any questions on this page here before we go to the next page?
Todd, do you have a question?
Fire away.
Why is the it's a small amount, but the gambling tax is removed completely from the budget?
We used to have the card room there at the Oak Tree.
Got it.
So
Okay.
there's a few places that have pull tabs, but it's just immaterial dollars, and so totally wiped it out for 2025. Okay, and that budget there for the 9,000, we have no dollars that have come in. So, okay. Going on to the next page. So when we get to the site plan review, those there are literally site plan that go through the planning department. And when we get to the planning department, you'll notice that our planning department costs have been flat because of the people in there, but we have a little bit of a change that we'll discuss here when we get to there. However, planning has gone down inside the city of Woodland, and now we've gone over into the building and the permitting side. Does that make sense? Well, before we had the 400 houses that were going in, it was a lot of planning. I've got my site plans that I want people to do. I have this acreage, what can I do? And now we're over into building, and I need to have the building permit and the code. Okay? So we'll get to that differential of cost. And staff, feel free to chime in at any point. I want to give kudos to them. We have gone through this extensively and worked making sure that there's good sound buy-off on this. Okay? School impact fees. A very interesting thing here I want people to know. We collect those dollars and then we pass them on to School District 404. We get to keep roughly $535, so call it less than $1,000 as administration fee, but you'll see it in here, and then we pass it and transfer it out. So, okay? And when we get to that slide, you'll see how we're assuming how we got to the impact fees. And assuming that we approve in December this budget, I will work with the school district, which I've given them a preliminary number, but I will let them know for their forecasting of what they think they will have for impact fees. Okay? So at the end of the day, the general fund is going up roughly $15,000, and $177,000 of that is impact fees from the school district that will be transferred through. So I've taken a very conservative approach on our revenues. Nothing worse than going 4 or 5 months into the budget and having a revenue shortfall and then needing to, scramble to make adjustments.
Your Honor. Are there any items in the revenue stream that are going to be limited to 2025 and not recurring beyond that?
Not that I know of. I don't think, there's a $65,000 grant that we have for the comp plan. So
Yeah.
65,000 came in 2024, and then 65,000 is coming in 2025. That is a dollar for dollar that we're spending on that.
Yeah, and we'll probably always have grants in process somewhere.
So that is there. The other thing I would throw out, as we get into some of this budget here, we have assumed that we will do some projects, and Riley will get into it, and he will show the grants that we're going after, and where we would put the city match, but our revenues do not assume that we are going to get those grants. That is a totally different approach that we have taken this year. I don't want to put a grant in there and assume, hey, we're going to get it, and then we don't. Okay? But in fact, I believe it was Carol that asked at last council if we were still going after grants. There's 4 of them, and that Riley will touch on each of those. Okay? Next slide. So then we'll get into the expenditures, and so you'll see that we tie back to the 10,065,000 number here, and you can see where our dollars are. 37% of our budget is the police department. If you look at what we have, a staffing plan here in the Woodland, city of Woodland, we've got roughly 40 people. We've got 20 people over in Public Works, Clerical Union, and we've got roughly 20 people over in the police department. So 38%. And you sit there and say, well, why is Public Works not, a 38% since they're part of their funds go into general facilities, part of their funds go into parks, part of their funds goes into streets, and it gets all spread out, whereas police department stays all completely housed internally. I will give you a heads up now when we get to the police department budget. It does go up year over year budget by about $500,000. We will walk through that. Again, I think people who know when I got elected, I'm very much about community policing. We've got 9 people, 1 person in the academy, so we've got 9 officers. We'll get into this, but I want to get up to 13 officers. It gives us a full staff, and we'll have that conversation with Chief. Okay? All right, so now that we're through general expenditures here, we're going to go through department by department of how we got to that $10 million. So, next slide, my friends. Legislative, judicial, executive, and legal expenses. So, this is my ownership because obviously legislative is all of you sitting here at council. So, this is where your salaries go in there, that $23,100, that's your $250 kind of a deal. Publications is the various AWC, different things that we have to do for the city council. Okay? And then the benefits are the taxes and the travel and training, the $1,500 if 2 of you want to go to a council piece. I believe it's over in Spokane this year. Okay? So that's that. When you get down to the judicial, the interpreter fees, those are when we have somebody in jail and we're required to pay for English or Spanish-speaking interpreter. Okay, and the intergovernment professional services. This is for different things that happen where we have intergovernment agreements with, say, Kelso or Longview or Ridgefield, La Center. Okay. Then you get down to executive. This is where the mayor sits. No-brainer with all of us. You know where that is coming from, the salaries. That is the executive. We used to have a city administrator. That position is eliminated. So the $145,000 plus the $52,000 is roughly at $200,000. I reduced the travel in half. The training is there. And then the miscellaneous piece there is for CW COG. So we're required to pay CW COG based on population. They sent us their latest bill, and it is now $17,347. And so I literally put that in there dollar for dollar. There is no money for miscellaneous for the mayor. Okay? JJ.
So that's went way up from, last year?
No, so that's a decrease.
2,500.
So, 186, we reduced the mayor slash city administrator budget by $186,000. Year over year budget. We went from a $214,000 budget to a $27,000 budget. Sir?
That was also in the community development budget previously. So it was moved out of community development into admin.
Correct. Does that give you heartburn, JJ?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm.
Again, I mean, we're
I
always,
figure if we got rid of the position, we no longer have any funds. For the,
we have no what?
don't have to have any funds for it.
Right,
Got
and
rid
that's
of
what, yep, and that's why it's a reduction there.
Okay.
Yep, 100% agree. And again, this
I
is
did see
all of
that.
our budget, this is our money, speak up,
Mhm.
okay?
All right.
And then down into legal services, so this is our outside legal fees. This is for Emily and her firm. Previously, we had Frank. If you remember the contract that we signed with Emily and those individuals here back in May, June, we pay a little bit more per dollar. Emily's on the call. Don't get excited, Emily. She's actually been quite a bit more efficient. So what we were paying, $7,000 and $8,000 a month for Frank at a lower rate has actually been charging us about $5,000 a month. So I took the liberty and reduced our outside legal fees there. Okay, and then the external claims and litigation, that $20,000, I think people know with the neighbor next to City Hall. Okay? And then Council for Indigenous Funds, those are people who are arrested and then do not have legal representation. So we are required to pay that. Okay? Any questions on the legislative, judicial, executive? Okay, next slide is treasurer and clerk. So we have the treasurer side. If you remember what we did, we had treasurer and we have clerk. Treasurer side is over in the finance where we have accounting, payroll piece there, and then the clerk side is the front office who receives, takes payments, does the public records requests, meets with the public when they come in to do their payments and all those. So up in the treasurer side, they're going up $34,000. Sit down, let's get all excited here. This is what Todd did, and we can have a discussion. Gina is sitting there. We have Gina who is out on FMLA. If you remember, we here 3 months ago, we posted for a clerk, or I'm sorry, a treasurer position, a city treasurer. She is a deputy clerk treasurer position. We have not filled that. Yes, it's been quite a bit of work while she's been out. Trish has done a great job stepping up. So is Carrie, so is Katrina, so is Amanda. They have all taken on pieces of the work. They get emails from me on the weekend and I come in Monday morning and like, here we go. I put in the budget that we would have Gina and we would have a backfill. That is what's causing that $34,000. I will leave it at that. Okay? So that we do have 2 full budgeted positions in the budget right now. Okay? Clerk position over here, you'll see they're going up $170,000. Salaries, personal benefits, professional services. So we've done a little bit of shifting around of those positions too. We previously had positions over in Travis's organization. We moved them under the clerk position, and so we now have done an alignment of what City Hall really looks like. At the end of the day, we are flat in dollar for dollar in the clerk's office. Okay? Any questions on treasurer and clerk? Let's move into general facilities. So general facilities, remember, this is where we have 7 buildings. This is not for parks, so when I say buildings, this is for City Hall, this is for the Public Works building, this is for this building here, this is for all of those pieces. Again, we will be selling the Public Works building. Hopefully we'll find a buyer that fits great in the community. Okay? But right now we have to assume that those repairs, maintenance, and utilities are on there. So going down, you have salaries of our employees that work, salaries, benefits. You have the office supplies, computer softwares and licenses. This is where we put all of our computer pieces, and when we deal with various technology upgrades. We will get into, I guess I should have gone back one, I apologize. IT support services in the previous one. We are in the process of switching over from Vision to Tyler Tech. This was something that we all looked to do. October is our first month that we're running parallel. Also included in the budget for 2025 is the funding to bring Minol in-house. I understand and I fully know it takes council approval. We are on a 2-year contract with them that runs through the end of next year. I'm optimistic. Riley is optimistic, and we think that we can do that with the current staffing levels we have and with the current labor negotiations that are going on. Okay? But we do have the funding for the technology and the IT in there. So then as you go down, insurance goes up $100,000. We previously, up until this year, we didn't have everything insured as we went through line by line with our department heads and understanding what pieces of equipment, what pieces of property, what buildings, and all of those pieces. So we now have a full itemized list of all the inventory of what needs to be insured, and our insurability is about $100,000 more. Utilities, this here, pretty flat. This is for all of our buildings. And then you work down, Davidson, we went back down to what it's actually costing for the utilities. Previously in the utilities, they had a little bit of expense where they remodeled and got it ready for the food carts. Okay? At the end of the day, we have a $100,000 increase for insurance, and we're still going down $83,000 on our general facilities and providing adequate funding to take care of the buildings that we have. And if we're able to sell the Public Works building, some of those costs would also be eliminated. Questions or comments on that? Okay, next slide.
Hey, she's got a question.
Oh, did you have one, Melissa?
Does
I'm
this
sorry.
include our new building?
Nope, so community center is part of the park.
Okay.
Yep, so when we get to the park budget, you'll see that we have money over there for the community center, the old library, the visitor center, and all those. And so that is part of our park funding. Okay? Community development. Travis, fire away, sir.
So the community development budget is pretty stable and consistent throughout the years. Typically, the only changes we have is cost of living and insurance changes. There's one big change this year, especially in the planning section, and that is we added $60,000 for professional services for the grant to complete the comprehensive plan. And then because we are doing a significant number of building permits, that we are doing some additional civil pass-through expectations next year. But that's not expected in the long run, simply because the amount of projects, as the mayor mentioned, those will be reimbursables. So we're spending the money now, but we'll receive it back in the future. So the more I spend, the more revenue will match that on the back end. But other than that, there are very few changes in our department. One thing we did do is combine the code enforcement with the permit technician. So you'll see a significant drop in the salaries in code enforcement. That's because it's being absorbed in a position that's already funded. Any questions?
So two things just to help. Another picture here. So when we say it's the pass-through, it literally is dollar for dollar. And one of the things that I absolutely agree with Travis's recommendation to continue doing is our outside inspecting and some of that work. So rather than us paying the bill or having it as an internal employee here and then trying to figure out, oh, how much should we charge out? It literally is, hey, it's gonna cost you $2,200 for this inspector to come out. We pay the $2,200, here's your bill, and it's a dollar for dollar. So there's no, difference of opinion there. And let's hit community development, Travis, right on the head with today's announcement. So we had an individual give their notice today, Maylene, who is our associate planner that we hired in November, December last year timeframe. She's going to work for the Department of Transportation, I believe. So Todd's view of the world here, and Travis and I have been talking about it, and I appreciate Travis's thought process now. It's only taken 10 months, but Travis is like, whoop, I know where you're going here, Todd. If you look at our community development and you look at what planning is, we only have $40,000 of revenue that comes in for planning, and we spend close to $1 million. Okay, that's planning, building, code enforcement, all of that. So Travis knows, he goes, well, I know you're gonna see that, Todd. So we have been talking here, and so with that, like I said, planning has now gone over to the permitting piece. We look to hire and backfill the code enforcement / permit tech who will help with that. My friend Travis here is gonna step up his game, and we won't hire an assistant planner. That $150,000 is in this budget here as labor's costs up above. So again, that's something that obviously I will need to bring back to council and tweak and remove those dollars. But I want people to be aware of that change from today.
So we don't have anybody in code enforcement right now?
Right.
I was currently doing that while Maylene was doing the permit technician support.
Okay.
So,
We'll just keep them doing it.
So we had talked to Maylene about combining her role. I'm not into doing layoffs. I'm not into reduction of forces, but I am to let's right size the city. And as people have left, let's look and say, hey, what does this look like today, tomorrow, 5 years down the road? And so when our code enforcement permit tech left, and we saw that planning dollars coming in were small, we broached the subject with Maylene and said, hey, listen, it makes sense for you to do code enforcement, permit tech, and the assistant planning work together. So that was our plan there. But now that we don't have the assistant planner and the planning really has, dwindled off, we will go back and fill the code enforcement / permit tech, which is also a lower paying job. Okay?
Sounds good.
Questions on that?
No, you're the mayor.
I'm just trying to spend the money
Well, I
wisely,
mean,
JJ, you know me.
I know.
Like they say, I'm cheap.
That's what I just said.
So, any questions on community development? And now they've passed the mic down to the chief, because we're gonna go through the police expenditures here.
Oh, okay, hold on.
So, here we go. Remember, 38% of our budget is spent on the police force. I put up there 2025 budget and 2024 BIS. Pardon my language, it's butts and seats. So I wanted people to see, what do we have today in our police force? We've had individuals leaving. I'll let Gibbs talk about what has happened here in the last month since he's been chief. So right now we have a police chief, 3 sergeants, 8 officers, plus one additional officer who's in the academy that we just hired here 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
And then the 2 clerks. That is our police force. What do we want our police force to look like long-term? And so it would be 1 police chief, 3 sergeants, 13 officers, and 2 clerks. The 13 officers would include the school resource officer. Okay?
And a detective?
The detective, correct. So we can get into as a detective, an officer, or as a school resource. But just for generalizations here, we thought it was easier just to call it officers. You know what I mean? But that gives them a full staff. And then you can see where our dollars are spent. Yes, sir.
The school person, the
School
school
resource
officer, yeah, he stays at the school, he doesn't work in the force?
So they're still working on the memorandum of understanding between the guild and the city. But ideally, yes, they would be dedicated to the school. However, they're still a collective bargaining member, so they could also bid overtime shifts as long as it didn't affect their school resource position.
Okay.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So-
the only question
Yeah, and
right
so
now.
when we say still working, there's not a disagreement between the city and the school. Asha and the chief and I have met, we've been working through it. It's very important that this is not a position that the police department and the city of Woodland say, here's what you get, here's our expectation, have a good day. And then the schools say, well, wait, could you come down and do this, this, and this? And we're like, ooh, no, that's not what we're doing. So we want to make sure, 1, it aligns, and 2, there's nobody in our police force right now that wants to go be a school resource officer. So we need to take the time, and that's what we're doing, is getting an MOU on what it should be or what it shouldn't be. So, does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I see we're going in from 9 officers from 2024 to 13. So that's, you want 4 more officers this year.
We're supposed to be at 11.
We're supposed to be at 11.
We're supposed to be at 11?
Yes. our
Is that
budget-
what we got approved?
Yes, the
Okay, so
budget
you're
right now
asking
is
for
for
2
11,
more.
and we can get into what has been approved and
Right,
all
yeah.
that. That's why I thought it was important, because
Okay.
right now, Gibbs, chime in, to walk through what does our schedule look like, when are we not?
So as of right now, in a perfect world, because of our staffing, there are 2 shifts on both A team and B team that are covered by overtime because we don't have the body for it. Also, if we had everybody that we are allotted right now from the hours of 3 a.m. to 9 a.m., you have a single officer working for the entire city. On a lot of occasions, due to vacations or sickness or whatever, we have a single officer working from midnight to noon for the entire city. Bumping these numbers up to what we're asking would actually give us a minimum of 2 officers working around the clock, so we'd be able to fill those gaps, and we wouldn't have somebody working by themselves.
So the question, my question is, do we have the money for 2025 to do it? I mean,
Absolutely,
We
in this
do.
balanced budget, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
But-
you can see we've moved on, and long-term, this is the thing. I'm not looking to hire a city administrator, we're not looking to add more people. We've got a management team that is looking for efficiencies, those efficiencies. What do I say? Guardrails, and this is what it's going to be long-term. So,
I'm not against
no,
officers.
100%, and that's why I wanted to show this here, what we have.
But what I'm thinking, and I haven't seen that yet, because I haven't been into the budget too much, is, okay, we get money this year to fund them. But next year, how are we gonna come up with the money to fund those 2 officers? And more, if you want them, again.
Well, I don't know that we would be adding officers after next year.
Well, they said last year.
So hold on here a
I
second.
mean, well,
So hold on here a second. What we're doing here also, by having full staff, our overtime will go down. Do I have it built in 100% here? I've tried to mirror what it would be, but there's no guarantee. Also, Chief, do you want to touch on Halloween night, how we were covering multiple areas? I mean, this is the thing here, where what keeps me up at night, and again, it's not about me, but this is what keeps me up at night, is the safety of our community. When again, I came down and said, hey, you guys want some candy to give out? And I know that we had a tragic accident at the mall. We had a double homicide up in Kelso, Longview area. And there's other agencies that are running short, and we now have our bodies trying to cover for other agencies here. That's hard wear and tear on our officers. And then turn around and say, okay, here I come at 3 a.m., we're gonna be down to one officer in our community.
I mean, just to add, I think something that's really important to come back to what you said, between potentially midnight and noon, there's one person. So, being a member of the community, if you call because you need help and that officer's already occupied someplace else, I mean, you do the math, right? There's
I
and that's not
understand.
fair to our officers either.
I called 911. I had an ambulance at my house in 3 minutes. You know, so I mean, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to
what
ambulance
I am
and fire,
is,
that's a little bit different, but
you know,
if you have a fire, you're gonna get 12 fire engines to show up. If you have a burglary, you might get an officer that shows up. So, I mean, they've got plenty of staffing, but
that's why you carry a gun.
yeah. Well, I can say in the 9 years that I've been here, we've never been fully staffed. The city has grown population-wise. The police department has not kept up. The lieutenant's position that is still on the books, I am a working chief. I am going to work closer with our administrative sergeant. We're going to eliminate that lieutenant's position to turn that into a patrol position as well. At least that's my request. And in doing this, it's going to help cut the budget. I mean, we're going to allocate that to be patrol. And the city's continuing to grow in the next couple of years. And so from my position, struggling with retention, struggling with recruitment, I don't want to be in the middle of a large growth impact to our city and still be struggling to get more officers. And guys are going to keep leaving too because they see greener pastures elsewhere.
Yeah, I know this. What they call it, a stop and rob. As long as we can pay the police every year, we got the money. I feel okay. And that's what I want to say.
If you look across the
Very
state,
cheap.
like the average budgets for cities for policing is somewhere up around 41 or higher % of a budget. So we're not too far off from that. We're also not asking for an excessive. I mean, if you go by the state average, you'll find that typically it's 30 to 40% of a city's budget goes to police.
JJ had a question about would there be funding next year to pay
Right.
for this? But it's a balanced budget, and you're not assuming any dollars that are here this year that wouldn't be here next year. I think that was asked as well. So,
And our revenues, I've kept them conservative. The revenues went up $15,000, and $177,000 of that is school impact fees. So I've been very conservative here. And again, I can't speak for everybody that lives in the city, but if you talk to people, they want to feel safe. Look at the camping piece. I mean, safety. And this is our opportunity as a council and as elected officials to say, hey, what is important to us? Mr. Brown.
On behalf of the community, and we have 4 children that all went through Woodland schools, we really want their city to be safe. And to feel like the budget is being cut, especially in the middle of the night, during the most questionable hours of the day, probably, I don't know the statistics with me, but I would think that would be weird if we want to have enhanced care over the city, rather than depleted care. So thank you.
Thank you for speaking up. Yep.
I want to thank you too, Mr. Mayor. I've spoken to many people that are afraid to go downtown and walk through downtown. They won't go. There's a lot of women that will not leave their house because all wandering around and it's scary. So, you know, I want to thank you for putting safety number 1 for your residents.
So, okay. Thank you, Dawn. So, if you turn the page, Carrie, yep, there you go. So here is where we get into the $500,000 increase, and you can see 430,000 of that is additional salaries and benefits. And then moving on down the list here, you wanna touch on training, what we're trying to do, Chief?
Yeah, so the training, we're required by state to have a minimum of 24 hours of training, which if we're adding more officers, obviously we're gonna need more training, but we also don't want to just do the bare minimum because our citizens deserve to have trained police officers. So that has to increase. That's probably the simplest way to answer that.
Oh, you gotta be trained.
You had another question?
Yeah, before we started. That's slipped my mind.
Melissa?
Also, in a lot of our meetings for public safety, the training, the more training and the differentiating in training that we provide for our officers, the more likely we are to keep our officers, because we provide a vast, diverse knowledge base for them to get training in and have different areas that they can become experts in, for our officers. Because I know we talked about, you know, like the drones, or whether it be joining the SWAT in another area, or all these different areas that we've talked about training in those things to keep our officers engaged and wanting to be here and not go somewhere else that has more opportunities. So I think that's very important to keep that training open and giving them those experiences.
The SWAT thing, since you mentioned it, is actually a big deal. I mean, when you look at Cowlitz County as a whole, Castle Rock is the smallest city or police department we have that doesn't even have 24/7 staffing, but yet they have a body to put on our Lower Columbia SWAT team. Woodland, and Kalam are the only ones that don't have that. So we have had some officers leave in the past go to our sheriff's office and whatnot just because they knew there was going to be an opportunity for that as well.
Oh, I found a question. I said, oh, you can't hear me? No, I don't see anything for vehicles for the new officers.
So vehicles doesn't go into their budget.
Oh, it doesn't
You'll
go
see
in
it.
their budget?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay.
down below, but you wanna touch on the vehicle situations, Chief?
You need what, 2, 3?
It'd be a total of 3, yeah. Right now we have 3 old vehicles that are, I believe, 2016 models.
Okay.
2 of them are primarily being used as backup cars. Just if we get a car that goes down, we have to have something to drive, so.
Okay.
Also, on the police department budget, I wanna talk about body cams and,
Shields.
no, I don't wanna talk about shields, you buried that last year. I wanna talk about, dash cams and, tasers. So, we've been looking at our body cams here, and they have a battery life less than 8 hours. Our shifts are 12 hours. They don't download to the cloud. When we have redaction that needs to be done, where the person's face or whatever, it has a clerk that takes hours on end to redact that person. Motorola is a cluster. So we've been looking at Axon, and we met with them for several hours. And last night I met with the Clark County mayors on our monthly dinner. I hosted them at the Oak Tree last night, and one of the things I asked them was who they use for their dash cams and their body cams. The Camas mayor talked about Axon, who we're looking at. They all use Axon other than us. Richfield doesn't have body cams right now,
Nope.
but they're getting them. They all use Axon, and he talked about one of the reasons he's a big proponent, their mayor is, of their dash cams. They had an officer go around a corner, a couple teenagers come around the other corner, and there was an injury there, but it came out where they were trying to come after the police officer as reckless driving. That dash cam protected not only the community as a lawsuit, but it protected that officer from losing their job and having long-term issues with that. So there is a huge benefit to have dash cams and license plate readers and all of that in our city. So the bid came back from Axon, and it's a 10-year package where it would give us enough body cams for our officers here. It would fit onto all of our vehicles, and every 3 years they would give us new technology in that fixed bid, and it's just short, call it $100,000 a year. So it's not in this budget here. It would be an increase. So you sit there and say, where's that coming from, Todd? Well, remember I said we have 3 positions in the clerical and in the public works and in the planning area that I have left there because we're transitioning through those pieces, that's a $250,000 to $300,000. I would like to move $100,000 of that into this budget here and authorize our police department to go get a long-term contract. So obviously I need to bring that contract back to council, but I didn't want chief to go on and do a bunch of work if council was gonna look at me and say, I'm not spending $100,000 a year for that. And so again, we can't make a decision here, but I would at least like to say, hey, is it something that I should have the or chief go negotiate with, or is it something, kick it to the curb?
Well, I think it's a good idea, and if we're eliminating the lieutenant position also, then that is saving money there too. So I think it's a good idea.
I would agree. I think it's a good investment for the city.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, and so one of the things that I touched on with Chief and Axon when I was with them is I would like to somehow get that implemented if we were to pass it this year, spend the first year dollars this year and plow our way through. But one of the benefits, and we'll bring the contract forward, is the 3 years. Is it 3 years or 4 years, Chief?
The entirety of the contract?
No, the new technology that they give us, they update and
Oh, so yeah, at year 3, we'd get new cameras for body cams in cars. At year 5, at year 8, and then at year 10, when the contract runs out, they still refresh and give us new stuff. The difference, so typically they do 5-year contracts. I've actually been talking to them weekly, trying to get the best possible deal we could. They're willing to do a 10-year fixed rate, so at 5 years it would run out. Everything goes up all the time, interest rates, the cost of equipment. They're not going to do that to us. They'll lock us in at the same rate for 10 years. They've also talked to me about potentially taking 2 years out of that 10, discounting it to $50,000, like half the cost. However, that doesn't mean that they're giving us that money back. They're going to work that into the other years of the contract, so you'd pay 115 in a year or 120, something like that. They're doing that to see if it'd be a less of an impact. So if maybe we're going to have a bad financial year, we could cut that for that year and then try to plan for the next year. But they've been working with us. They're willing to throw in even all the hardware that we'd mount them with and extra charging stations, everything at no cost for that, just to try to get a contract. Axon is an innovator in body cams. They're the only ones that do tasers, and they were the first ones to start doing body cams and dash cams for all law enforcement across the entire country. Motorola works with communication. Motorola's a great company, but they don't compare at all to Axon when it comes to the technology.
And the biggest thing is they have a 12-hour, actually longer than a 12-hour life. So our officers don't, if they're out on a call, don't have to go, oh, my battery just died, and you worry about that. They can focus on a call, and it downloads to the cloud. So if I'm on a call and I need another officer, they can access that information and see what's going on there instead of going, well, let me wait till it gets downloaded here. And the redaction is, I push a button to cover that person's face, and it will follow that person throughout the whole video and make it much easier on the clerk.
So, do we have a contract on the ones we have now?
So that's a great question.
I know.
So I'm the chief now. I can
It's
speak
'cause
for
we got 1 year,
past
fine.
instances where there wasn't good communication. There wasn't, we weren't talking about these conversations weren't had internally. Things were just made on a deal. We paid for the Motorola. We owe no more money to them. We paid for that up front. So good for Motorola to be able to lock us into that. But as the mayor was saying, we have had videos that have disappeared, never loaded up to the cloud. We've had audio problems. We've had cameras stop working. The battery life is poor. When an officer has to come back towards the end of their shift to upload video, it's causing them to get maybe a half hour of overtime or so waiting for that to happen. It's just several issues. One of our clerks, she had to download a 45-minute video for a public disclosure request. It took her 6 hours. So that's 6 hours of a
45
clerk's.
minute?
Yes. So that's 6 hours of her wages and everything being dedicated to a 45-minute video when Axon's going to take 25% of that time. So if you think of it that way, I mean, that's cost saving in itself just from the clerk's redaction time.
So what do we do with the old cameras?
Well, we've paid for the technology and we need to maintain them for public records purposes because we still have those videos. But I mean, we could always reach out to other agencies that are looking to, to get something on a discount,
We wanna
see
do
what we
that
can get
today.
out of them. You know, those are options. I'm not a shady car salesman, so I still feel pretty dirty about selling those to somebody, but if it gets us a discount, I guess, you know, we'll explore that.
You were gonna
I'm
ask.
just gonna, so there's no contract with Motorola?
No, so we went back and forth with Motorola for weeks. It was a simple email of, hey, can you show me a signed copy of our contract? I searched through thousands of old emails from the former chief. I found a quote that was never signed or anything. They still haven't shown me a copy of one, but back and forth from the emails, it looks like we paid the full amount up front when we first got them. So we aren't, like, there's no penalty. We've already paid for them.
Okay.
And Motorola knows that we're looking at
Yeah.
something else. I mean, they
Yeah.
know that their product is.
Yeah, and they're great. I mean, all of our car radios, our portable radios, everything's Motorola. But again, when you can't compare Axon, and it literally is a product that you get what you pay for.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Terry.
I don't think we should wait on that, mainly because of the liability. If somebody, we're missing some action here in a camera, we get sued.
100%.
That cost of that additional equipment would be negligible in comparison, so.
As mayor, one of my biggest jobs is to be risk,
Right.
avoidance, risk, officer. And that's where, I mean, totally agree. And so I didn't want, with this budget, I didn't know where council would be, increasing it by 500,000. We've had extensive conversations here. I've met with the guild. I've had dialogue with them of the lieutenant, no lieutenant, what looks right, what feels right. And like I said, we have a new individual that's off to the academy, Bryce. He'll be there. We've had other officers that are now applying into this. Things are looking up, and I just want to support our guys.
So you think that we do need them, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
So
especially
why
with
can't we buy them out of this year's budget?
Well, so hold on. We can't buy
Let's do it.
the whole $800,000.
No, you said 100,000.
Oh, absolutely, and that's what we
Yeah,
want to do.
right.
And so again,
That's what I'm
this
saying.
is what we talked about even this weekend, Chief and I, is I wanted to make sure. What's the first question I've been asking? Would you rather have the additional officers or the technology on the cars? And him and the officers all said they need additional officers before the technology. It's grinding to continually working the constant overtime and not having another officer on duty. So that's where I said, okay, let's take forward a budget here that puts in our individuals. I said, let's sharpen our pencil on the total city budget. We've got some different positions that are in flux and things, and let's find out what council's appetite is to spend another $100,000, which takes us to $600,000 to buy that technology. Because again, I wanted to make sure the officers were in here because that's what they were telling me. They're the experts. So that's why now, fire away.
We talk about protecting the citizens in our community. Well, I'm equally concerned about our officers. Guys ever wore their shoes? You'd be 100%, 110% behind it, believe me. So I'm all for it. If we don't have it, we need to find it. And there's a lot of other priorities aren't near as up the ladder as this one is, in my judgment.
Yep. So, Melissa?
So, does this include any of the license plate readers at all?
Yes, so Axon's a little bit different, and not to bore you, but like NCIC and WASC, those are national and Washington State databases. Axon has its own database called evidence.com, which is something that we could build by entering plates and all that sort of thing. They do have license plate readers. We could also work out interlocal agreements with like State Patrol, who uses Axon, Vancouver PD, who uses Axon, and so things they've already built into their network, we could work with them and get access to that as well. But essentially, anything that is entered in that database, if our car is behind it, it will pick up on that and it will give the officer an alert. And then the human element has to come into play, and they have to compare to make sure that that's actually a Washington plate and maybe not a Nevada plate. But they will get alerts for things like stolen vehicles or vehicles of interest.
Okay, perfect. And then what, with our current budget for this year, what is our remaining that we have to spend on things? Like, do we have the 100,000 to go ahead and put forth to it, do we have more than that, that we could go ahead and offset that even more so?
So remember, if we, how our funding works, so if I have $1,000 budget and I spend $800 this year, that $200 rolls to next year, cause we do fund, it's funding here. So, I mean, yes, we have room in our budget this year. If we were to go spend the $1 million, okay, our ending fund balance comes down, and it's just pulling money forward kind of a deal. His budget is about let me go to my other sheet here. He's going to end up forecasting, I am, about $400,000 favorable to budget at the end of the year. He's got a $3.2 billion budget, and I'm forecasting him to come in just shy of $2.8 million. So,
Okay.
yes, we have the $100,000 in his budget, and that's why I've also been saying, hey, if we can get council to move forward on this, I want to make sure Axon can move forward and do something this year. And so that's been part of our dialogue and conversation. Again, I did not want to come forward asking $500,000 and then say, well, on top of that, we have $800,000, a $100,000 contract, and you all look at me and say, hell no. So
Right.
that's where we are here. I think the direction is very clear. We are going to go sharpen our pencil with Axon and get a contract in front of council to approve, and then we can get that technology installed this year.
And just to be clear too, speaking with the reps, waiting for everything to come in and uploading the vehicles, fitting them for everything, we would be looking at probably first couple weeks of February by the time we got everything installed and up and running for us. So if we were to order something December or even here in the next few weeks or so, it's still going to take time for the equipment to come in and for them to install everything.
So we can pay that first year.
Right.
Any other questions or comments? Again, it's all our community, it's all your safety, so I just wanna make sure there's no.
I just think it's nice that you're adding technology while adding the officers, because earlier the discussion was what can the budget support in the way of bodies and how we need the bodies to reduce overall stress on officers. And so this technology adding concurrently will keep the sort of saw sharp throughout as we add the new personnel. So I like it.
Awesome, thank you, I appreciate the feedback.
And just to touch on that kind of off topic, but we do have two lateral officers tomorrow attending an oral board, and one's a Longview officer, one's a Ridgefield officer. That has been something that we have not been able to do in a long time, is get good qualified candidates. So there's potential that both those officers could get through a background and potentially already have more staff than we have right now to start the year with. They would take very little time to get trained up and on the road. They don't have to go to the academy. They're already using the same technology and processes we have right now.
See that even the officers want to come here from Longview.
Make it happen, Chief.
I've worked a lot of years and a lot of hours, and the technology is really nice.
Oh, yeah.
But the officers, having one officer on duty from midnight to noon, it's a killer. And after a while, it shows, and it just wears them down.
Absolutely. I mean, that late shift, and again, if you see an officer at Walmart or you see them around town, they are part of our community. Stop. Hey, officer, how you doing? Talk to them. Again, they know my red car with the vanity plate on there. They all know. Oh, here comes the mayor.
He follows us.
Yeah, I follow around town. I mean, seriously, encouragement, knowing that the community respects them, appreciates them. It's a big deal. So, okay.
Quick question, you're talking about adding the technology and police officers, is that to bring it up to 11 or 13?
That officers would bring it up to 13.
Great.
You on board? Perfect. Okay.
All right, real quick.
Yeah.
So This technology, are we doing it with the assumption that there are 13 officers? And so I know with the shields and stuff that we got, we have 9. Are you considering getting 4 more since you have some extra in your budget for this year to go ahead and anticipate 13?
I'll consider everything you guys give me.
I mean, I'm just saying, since you
I know,
have that
I know.
wiggle room already this year.
Yeah, and so the contract we worked out was for 15 patrol vehicles, so it would give both sergeants a camera. If we had the additional officers, that'd be 5 per team. It would give our school resource officer a dash cam, and our detective positions would have it as well.
Okay.
I would not have one. I'm not an active patrol person. I'm responding to critical incidences if there is one. And then our administrative sergeant is also not an active patrol person. So those 2 cars would be without them, but everybody else would be outfitted. As far as the shields are concerned, yeah, it's something that we could look into. I'd be more than willing to order more if I could get approval for that as well.
Chief shortchanges himself.
Mm-hmm.
He's not in full gear tonight. He comes to staff meeting. He comes around the community. He is fully dressed just like our officers. He has his body cam on. He has his taser. He has his gun. And I asked him at staff meeting this week, I said, Chief, and what was your response, sir?
I'm no different than the rest of them, and there's no reason why I should look different.
So, I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Now you see how our staff meetings are.
No, I got nothing against the officers or anything like that. I always supported the police, fire when we had it. But like I say, I do worry about how we're gonna pay you next year. And because if we don't have the money next year, what happens? You lay them off. Well, yeah. So,
Okay.
keep the people aware.
Next slide, Carrie. Travis, do you want to touch on impact fees here on our assumptions?
Sure. So the mayor mentioned how much community development costs. One of the issues that I deal with on the front end is how much revenue is coming in. So the building revenue is about $480,000 a year, estimated by this. And planning is about $40,000, $42,000, $60,000 for the grant. And so we're considerably under. One of the things that my department does do, and that is growth represents revenue for other funds. And so I look forward next year and figure out, okay, we're going to have 6 residential units, 6 multifamily residential structures, and I estimate we're going to do about 60 single-family residential next year. And then I estimate how many land use applications we're going to have. So that's how I achieve that number, which you'll see on the next slide. But I'm estimating 4 site plans, a couple zoning text amendments, a conditional use permit, and zoning map amendments. Those are zone changes. So I'm estimating that there's going to be 3 RV parks that are going to be looking for rezones. So that's Woodland Creek, or I'm sorry, Woodland Shores and the Belmont RV, and then there's another property owner who wants to build one. So that's kind of how I arrived at the numbers right here. The next slide, this is going to represent the funds that we were talking about. So again, the top lines, the top 2 sections there, building permits and plan review, that's where the building revenue is itemized for the individual planning cases. Now at the very bottom there, you're going to start to get into the impact fees. So looking at how many residences we expect to be built over the next year, each one of them is going to contribute either $5,900 to the school district, and we have a very small amount of administrative charges for that, but the majority, the bulk of that will go directly to the school district. So we're estimating about $530,000 will go directly to the school district. Next slide. So the transportation impact fees are between $4,900 and $6,900, depending on the type of residential structure that gets built. And so we are estimating that next year we'll get about $500,000 worth of traffic impact fees. And even as I look at this, it occurs to me that might even be a little bit on the low side, depending on whether we have any commercial structures that get built. But I didn't project any that I knew for sure. So there may be more traffic funds than the 504,000 there. For fire impact fees, it's a rate of 51 cents per square foot of construction, or a flat rate of 14.26 for single family residential. So again, it's just simple mathematics of how many units and the types of development that are going to occur times the square footage. And so that's $131,000 that will go towards capital improvements on the school, on the fire side. So whether that's paying off debt for the fire hall, or whether it's buying additional equipment for new firefighters or new ambulance, that's extra money that wouldn't be part of the normal budget. Park impact fees is the same thing. So residential developments, commercial and industrial, do not pay into the park impact fee fund. It's only residential users who use our park. And that revenue, again, is calculated based on a rate of $4,580 per unit. And that'll be about $412,000 estimated revenue for the park impact fees. And then the bottom two sections there, again, using the number of units we expect to be built, we estimate there's going to be water connections and sewer connections at each one of those structures. And so that represents additional funds that the Public Works Department can project over the next year.
So one of the things I thought was important, if you go back 2 slides, Carrie. Thank you. Our budget, as we're working through the year, and we're not saying, well, wait a minute, I wanted something here that says, Travis, how many permits have you issued? What do we got? And he can tell me. Well, I assumed they were going to have 60 single-family homes, and you know what? They only have built 40. And then we can say, okay, that explains it. So, one, that's why I put this in here, is I want people to know exactly. I didn't want to do a rough, well, let's swag. Travis, tell me what you're assuming. Then when we get to the impact fees, I think it's important for people to know our impact fees in this budget are not being spent on any of them. So, transportation, the water, sewer, you have to have new construction, and it has to be a new project. You can't go and replace and do some of those. There's some specific requirements for that. So as these dollars come in on these impact fees, the only one that is getting spent is the fire, and that is because we have a bond on the fire center of about $15,000 a year. So we do use that one for the fire piece. But those others will sit in our reserves, and when we get down to Riley's budget, you'll see sewer reserves are one thing, utility, water impact fees are another. So I just want people to understand 2 different things. Part of our budget, but we are not spending these dollars, and we're not putting anything in the forecast to spend these dollars. So when we talk about people wanting a water park, I know the Dobas gave us $10,000 of land, and you don't want to go down that rabbit hole? Okay. Could you use some of the impact fees for that? Something like that, park impact fees, you could. But again, there's nothing in the budget for that type of stuff. I just want people to understand what impact fees are used for. Okay?
So Travis, am I understanding you said that as some of these RV parks move to be long-term parks, they then settle as multifamily residents?
No, so those kind of separate those into 2 ideas. They are existing impacts to the community. They would not be new impacts to the community.
Okay.
The revenue that we're talking about is a $2,500 application to change the zoning. So
Okay.
it represents planning revenue.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, the ZMA, the zoning map amendment.
Okay.
So they would have to come in here and say, right now, we're in C1, and I want to go to C3.
Okay.
Does it, regardless if you approve them going to C3 or not, they still have to pay the $2,500.
understand. Okay.
Questions on impact fees? Thank you, Travis. Next slide, Carrie. All right, recording fees. So I wanted people to see here, I know that Deanna Holland came and talked about the Woodland Action Center. I just wanted it to show here. So recording fee, so when people buy, sell houses, that recording fee, dollar for dollar, goes from the city of Woodland over to the Woodland Action Center. $10,000 is budgeted for 2025, and it just goes in and out, but I wanted the people to have the visibility there.
And when do we get collect that, the
We
fees?
collect it monthly as there's recording
Monthly?
fees that are on houses. And then, Deanna's, the Woodland Action Center sends in invoices and bills and
Oh,
things,
okay.
so, and we work on it. Okay? LTAC, this is the lodging,
Tax.
okay? So I wanted to have visibility here.
Yeah, I wanted to
You can see the, proposed budget of the revenues there on that second line is $60,000 is what we're projecting to come in. $126,000 would be the fund because we had a beginning fund balance of $66,000. And you can see the LTAC committee recommended $70,000 to give out, and so you would see that our ending fund balance would be around $34,000. Okay? Questions on that one? Okay, moving on. Now we're gonna go into the park fund. Riley?
Yeah, absolutely. So this gives kind of an overlay of the park fund and how the revenues are contributed to that fund. Mostly you'll see there 83.9% of those funds are contributed from the general fund. So our park fund is mostly funded by the general. So everything that comes in for park projects all comes from the general fund. So we have to kind of mitigate over the year what we're going to allocate that to, because it is not a self-sustaining fund balance. If you go to and you look at contributions from general fund, kind of gives a breakdown. That 483,000 is broke down to the allocated to the Horseshoe Lake Shelter Roof at 80,000, and the Community Center Foundation estimated at 125,000. That gives a old library for 30,000 for the new paint, flooring, and ADA restroom. So that gives a park general contribution from the general for the park fund at 207,000 for the remainder of the allocated funds. Go down, just kind of put the highlights. We're expecting the average community center, civic center is added on there for 9,000 for the year. Oh, go back one. Yep, one more. There you go. So we expect the same rental fees to come in for the Horseshoe Lake shelter area all the way across the board. $9,000 is allocated for the civic center for utilities, rentals to come through for revenues. I think that's about everything. The RCO grant for $100,000 was allocated for 2024. That's again another grant that we did not receive, but we allocated it to the revenues, so it kind of skewed our revenue funds for 2024. That again is why we're not adding any kind of grant revenue that we haven't already received. Then we can go next slide. So park fund expenditures, main one there is the 44.7% goes into repairs and maintenance, and I kind of covered on that for the Horseshoe Lake Shelter Roof at 80,000, Community Center Foundation at 125,000, and the old library. The idea behind that, the old library will bring up to ADA compliance for the restroom, new floor, new paint, and then while we're doing the work on the Community Center Foundation, we'll have another community center for the public to use at that time. So it won't slow that down at all.
So let's clear up some conversation around the old library, since we're all friends in the room here. So, the old library, upstairs, we will use for storage of records here at the city, rather than us paying off-site and paying other costs. And you say, well, wait a minute, why are you using that historical building? it's not ADA compliant. We would have to put in an elevator. There is work that we would have to do to be able to use that second story. Okay, so if we wanted to open it up to everybody, nobody would be allowed to go upstairs anyway because it's not ADA compliant. Did the old library operate that way? They did, but again, that's not how we're gonna run things here. So that now opens up downstairs, and that's why we gotta do some work on the bathroom to make the bathroom ADA compliant. And that is, you know, it's not millions of dollars, it's not hundreds of thousands, it's very doable, it's reasonable, and it still allows the library to be used and accessible by the community. So you have the community center that's next door, and you'll have the library. And again, people can use or rent whichever ones they want. Quite a bit of usage on the weekends, so we definitely think there's a need for the community to use the old library. But I just wanted people to understand the downstairs, why we're not doing the upstairs.
At one time, I thought I remember a discussion of selling the old library building. Has that been, or am I using
Nope.
that with a different building?
Nope, that was the Public Works building.
Okay.
Yeah, so no discussion on getting rid of the old library. But just wanted people to understand why it's downstairs.
Perfect. So this brings up a little bit more in-depth expenditures for the parks. You can see there repairs and maintenance building. That is for the existing community center foundation of $125,000. Down a little bit further for the parks expenses, repairs and maintenance building miscellaneous. You'll see the $30,000. That is for the old library to kind of revamp that, ADA restroom, paint, and flooring. Everything else is pretty straightforward. Communications, utilities. Thanks, Mayor, for not increasing utility rates, so we can keep that the same. Operating supplies, pretty standard. Cleaning, everything's pretty straightforward for going from 24 to 25. So park fund expenditures extended. Everything's pretty straightforward. Utilities.
So hold on a second, there's Civic Center. Melissa, you earlier asked where the Civic Center is. So these are our expenses for the Civic Center.
Yeah, so there is a little bit, in 2024 budget, there was operating supplies, communication, utilities. That was in the 2024 budget. Since we're gonna have that up and running in 2025, those are some added expenditures that we're gonna accrue there. Those are revenues of the $9,000 is what we kind of projected for what we make off the community center if we were to rent that out. And that's kind of the direction that we're headed at this time. Kind of down a little bit further, you can see we go into pretty generic salaries, personal benefits increase slightly. Pretty same all the way down. We have one thing that we need to kind of talk about. Utilities. You can see that there's a $33,000 negative for the utilities, and that is for the Horseshoe Lake Park, the green space where the sprinklers were installed in 2022. That's one thing that I would like to get some direction from council on. It costs the city about $33,000 a year to keep that field green, just for water. So I didn't add it to the budget in 2025. It can be added in. We need to move some numbers around. But to me, for $33,000 to keep that field green over the course of the summer is a little bit outrageous. And I'm just kind of looking for direction from council on what you guys would like to see.
I think we need to keep our parks looking good. People use them. I hate brown grass. Any other comments or suggestions? I'd be more than happy to put it back in there. I just want to kind of get direction. That's a very large utility bill for a few months out of the summer. So
Well, my front yard's brown in the summer because I water my garden, and I'm
Yeah.
not gonna do both,
So the $3,600 that's already in there is for the restrooms at Hoffman Plaza, for the utilities that's located there. Other than that, the restrooms, the portables that come in is all under the miscellaneous category. So I have one that says yes, green, one that says brown's not bad.
I do agree it's a lot of money.
I know.
However, I am going to say that it gets used for volleyball and for movies in the park and things like that, and it is not very comfortable to play on dead grass versus green grass
Oh, shit.
and sit in the park on a blanket. And so if it's our park, I think it needs to be green. So I kind of lean towards JJ and agree that if we want it to look nice, it should be green. And if we, I mean, I don't know. I do agree that appearance matters, and it is our one really nice thing we have that welcomes everybody to our town, that it should be green.
Riley, are there?
But I do agree that it is a lot of
Can we-
money, but I do think it needs to be green.
Can't we put a
Are there
standpoint in there?
Are there options as far as, I don't know, like,
Can we pull it from the lake?
well,
No.
no, obviously not. But as far as like, are there certain months that we're watering more than others? Is August the worst month? Could it be like, could we stop in August?
Yeah, July, August, and September are our three highest
Those are
months.
burning months.
Yep. And I would,
Huh? What's that?
so we currently
Yeah.
do not have any water rights allocated to Horseshoe Lake, or else
if
we
you
would
put a
definitely be
sand
looking at
point?
that.
Could you not put a sand point in down there just to water the fields?
So water rights come into play, and when you run over 5,000 gallons per day, which we would run past that, so that would be a water rights issue. We would have to mitigate from our rainy well. That's a whole different subject. So yes,
What about some combination? I mean, could we pull some groundwater through a sand point and then some city water to supplement? Is there a
like I said, as a municipality, it comes down to water rights, and when you talk to the Department of Ecology about that, they don't mitigate one for the other. So we would be putting our current water rights withdrawn from our drinking water rainy well on the line for any kind of rainy well spike of any kind.
Good. Another question. So we stop watering, and then we, in effect, stop paying ourselves to water. So then you're effectively reducing revenues by the amount that you're not spending, right? Because we're just paying ourselves back. It's kind of circular.
But
So
again,
I get different budgets.
But let's, so this $33,000 hits our residents twice. Because again, we're paying $33,000 here and saying, okay, the green grass is worth 33 grand. But then when you go and look and say, what does it cost to filter and clean and do all that with our water? And again, there's only so many residents for the number of gallons of water we're using. I mean, that's where I struggle, Ms. Brown.
Yeah, and I think from an environmental perspective, it's not exactly conservative. And we live in a rainy place, it's gorgeous and green now. I go down there and walk every day in the rain and look at it. So I guess it's just how you look at it. I agree, I let my water go brown in the summer just because it costs so much and there's so many places running out of water. So I just think that it's a little negative.
So here's where I struggle, is we have residents who struggle with their water bills and they're not watering their lawns. I mean, how many, I mean, I don't know what percentage of people have green grass in the front, but to say, but you know what, we're gonna have green grass at the park and it's our gem, which I totally agree it is, and we spend money to go down there and clean it up, and we're doing all of those things, I totally agree. I just have a tough time saying, I'm sorry your grass isn't green, but ours is, come on over.
How about if we let it go brown and people complain about it, and then they can donate money?
Oh, here we go.
I'm
Oh.
serious, I'm serious.
But
They could donate money to, if they wanna keep it green.
Yep,
we look at places like Kalama though, and they are green, and it's
Yes.
very nice and welcoming. Like
Mhm.
I think we need to have something that is welcoming. Like I don't think we need to have. I don't know. Like it is something that is nice about our town that I don't think we want it to look bad. I think we need to take pride in it, and I know it costs a lot, but it's something that we need to say. This is something we're proud of, and not that we're trying to be penny pinchers about. Like, and I'm sorry, I understand I live in an HOA, we're required to have green grass. I pay a fortune, I hate it. Every summer it hits my pocketbook, but it is what it is. I have to do it. Whether I want to or not, I have to. I think it's what our town has to do. We have the grass. We're responsible for taking care of it for our citizens.
Do we have to water? I mean, is there an option of conserving? Like, okay,
Can we water half the,
Yeah.
amount? Like, it's still getting water, but
less,
not.
or certain areas? Could you cap off sprinkler heads? I don't know. Just thinking outside the box.
It is every day that we water, and I couldn't really tell you exactly how much water to keep the field green. I know that we probably overwater a little bit, but at
Well, I
that,
know my husband does.
I don't want to be at I don't want to be at $25,000 spent and then come up with a brown field. You know, so.
No, I understand, but I think there are lots of towns around us, and when they have a park, you go to them because they're nice, they're green, they're inviting, they're a place to go to and enjoy for the summer. If you go to somewhere that has dead grass, I'm gonna keep going. I'm not gonna stop. I'm not going to enjoy it, like,
How many times did you go to Horseshoe this year?
Me?
I'm just trying to think outside
Probably
the box. I mean,
300.
movies in the park, I went to every one but one. And again, I support the movies in the park. We had about 100 people that were there on the one side down there. You have the other parts of the park. People walk through from their car down to the lake where they lay next to the beach during the hot summer. There's a few people on there. I appreciate what you're saying there. I'll take whatever you guys want. If you want the $30,000 in there, I'm just saying. Riley knows how I think, and so
It's a fund that, like I said, the park fund is 100% funded by the general fund. So this is $33,000 that, if we don't water, goes to some other allocation in the general.
So what it would look like if we watered every other day?
What?
Are we sure?
What's that?
Well, like I said, we always go to the cautionary side and overwater slightly. But if you would like to do a conservative every other day, we'd be more than happy to do that. But I would hate to spend $10,000-15,000 into this and still end up with a brown field. So.
Also, just, I guess, I hear you, I do, but I've heard two community members also now say,
I don't care if it's spring, because I don't water my yard all summer long, and I'm not willing to pay $33,000, so somebody else can see beauty, but I can't see beauty in my own yard, so I'm against it.
Well, you can pay us.
People are gonna come anyway, cause I'm down there literally every day, all year round, they
Mhm.
come anyway, and then you make it beautiful and green, and they're trampling all over it and knocking it all up, and it gets all, there's a lot of maintenance they have to do too, so. I would just say, I don't know, it's just nature.
Mhm.
Makes it the dry time of year. And then we get really, really green for the rest of the year. Winter's beautiful.
Yeah. Why don't we just sleep on it? It's preliminary. We'll
Well,
go back to
that's what
it.
they call wait to approve the budget. Put it in the budget and we'll knock
Okay,
it out
perfect.
or-
So moving on, the next line item you'll notice is 100,000, and that is for the 80,000 for the roof at the Horseshoe Lake Park Shelter. That's another 20,000 for other playground equipment that fail. We've had a lot of issues with lately with playground equipment that we have to replace. The $100,000 in the 2024 budget is the RCO grant that we did not receive, so we have to act like we never got that. So. Moving to the next.
I think
Hey,
JJ has a question.
I was just gonna ask a simple question.
Mhm.
Do we intend on putting any power to the gazebo?
We did put power to the gazebo.
Oh, there is
Yep,
some
that's
now?
been, we put power in about 2 months ago when we put
Oh,
in the
okay.
ADA door at City Hall. We actually had them put power down to the gazebo.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions on park fund before we go to the street fund?
Let me make one suggestion. As some of you know, I'm the park manager at Woodland East, and we have a half acre in lawn that we water 3 times a week, and it never goes dry. And we water at 4 to 5 a.m. in the morning. You guys water early before the sun even thinks about coming up. I think we should consider, every other day rather than 7 days a week, because we do it three days a week, and we alter the weekends.
He's
and it
recommending
stays
every
green
other
all
day.
year long. We never have a problem. I don't imagine there's much difference between our lawn and the park. Just a thought.
Ask Tom Golick, he'll tell you.
Okay.
He's telling me about mine.
Okay, let's move to the street fund.
Yeah, let's go.
Is that a motion?
I move.
Okay, street fund.
Okay, street fund. Pretty self-explanatory. We take care of 34 miles of roads, 434 storm drains, catch basins, and 385 street lights. So there's quite a few of those, and I will just make the comment, the street lights, we had 4 of those struck by vehicles this year, and they are very expensive, and most people that hit those don't have insurance. So there's an increase in the budget for extra street lights that get hit and damaged.
When he says expensive, we're talking 15 to 16,000 a piece
That's per street light.
per street light.
So, a good thing to point out with this too, the contributions from the general fund, that 522,000 involves the grant project matches of 323,000, and then a general fund transfer of additional 199,000 for the street fund. This is, again, the street fund is not generally a self-sustaining fund. This is also funded by the general fund mostly. Next slide, the street fund revenue. We have a beginning fund balance of approximately 419,000 that's carryover from 2024. Going down, we have pretty much standard all the way down. Let me see here, contributions from, so the contributions from the general fund to current in 2024 was at 963,000. That included a lot of the ARPA funding. It's usually around the 528,786, depending on which kind of grant matches we're expecting for that year. Like I said, this year we're expecting 323,000 if we get all 4 grant applications that we applied for. Any questions on the revenue side? No?
So you understand, so the grants, we will get the funding in, but our match is roughly 328,000. So we would need to move $328,000 from the general fund. So we built that into the budget that, hey, we're gonna have to spend $328,000 for these matches. So if we don't get those grants, then it would be
Just
three.
stay in the,
Yep,
stay in the general fund.
correct. Yep.
And we'll go through a slide later that involves the grant applications, but if the city is awarded those grants, we will then move those into their own BARS codes and then create a revenue that way. So we don't affect the actual street fund, it'll be its own separate BARS code. Okay, so street fund expenditures, you'll notice the large portion, 45.9% of that is salaries and benefits. A lot of our street crew is based off of the salaries from the street, water, and wastewater department for collections and distribution. So it's kind of divvied up between the 3 funds. One big takeaway from this, the charges to general fund. So we actually have an enterprise tax on the stormwater, which is 12.5%. That's the 121,000 that you see then going back to general. So it goes from the enterprise funds to the general to the street and parks, and then stormwater goes back out of the street department back into general. So it's kind of a back and forth and so on. So next slide. So this one kind of breaks down street department, pretty status quo, increase in the salaries and benefits portion for 2025. So if you go down to professional services, just kind of want to touch on this really quick. Professional services in street, water and wastewater, that is for your engineering portions for your grant projects. So in 2024, we looked at what kind of grant projects are we going to look at and apply for in 2025. We have to have a certain amount of engineering of that project done and designed before we can go out for grant applications. So each year we'll look forward to, say in 2025, we'll look for 2026 projects. We'll start that engineering services, therefore we can apply for grant applications and hopefully get those projects. So that's when you see professional services. Just think of engineering services for those individual things: street, water, wastewater. So moving down, so just below there you'll have the repairs maintenance projects. There's $100,000 allocated in there. It was $491,000, and that again is for grant projects that they expected to get, and then they built it into the actual street fund. Thankfully, we did receive that project, so that was allocated out of those funds. This year we're not doing that, but that $100,000 that's actually in that fund is for emergency repairs. So we have a lot of street repairs, we have a lot of things that happen unexpected. They're very costly, and that's where the $100,000 comes into play. Moving down, let's see, so you'll see the $60,000 for equipment and streets. That is money set aside for a new 3-yard bed insert for de-icer for one of our trucks, so we can do adequate de-icing, sanding during inclement weather. That also involves a new Kubota mower. Our mower that we use at the park is extremely old and needs to be replaced, so that's replacement is built into that fund also. A tilt bucket for the Kubota excavator is built in there that we can do a side swing on the bucket, and also a new jumping jack. So that $60,000 is split between street, water, and wastewater, so they are all contributing to those pieces of equipment that we need. And then down below that, you'll have the contributions to the 330 all the way to the 336. Those are all projects that have either been completed or we have grant matches. So like the gun club project, we already have city match set aside for that project to move forward in 2025. So that project is fully funded for city match. Any questions on that? So the next one here is the street fund grant opportunities. So we applied for 4 grant projects this next year in 2025. In addition, we are moving forward with the gun club full project, grind and overlay, bike lane, sidewalk, ADA ramps, the whole 9 yards on that. But this shows Atlantic Sidewalk. We have a portion of complete sidewalks that we are looking to get replaced. That's right in front of B. Young RV. Connects the Sagawas to the remaining sidewalks south on Atlantic. Davidson Avenue grind and overlay project. This goes from the Gorig all the way down to the railroad tracks. There's a lot of cracking, and we want to make downtown look good. So we applied for that grant also. Pacific Sidewalk, the $200,000, $49,000 for city match. We actually received confirmation that grant was most likely going to be allocated, so we're looking forward to that. The South Pekin to city limits. So we eliminated, since this was built, the grind and overlay portion. So the $432,000 grant request is just for the sidewalk and bike lane. We were allocated $120,000 of that already, so we're expecting the remainder of that funds to be allocated so we can move forward with that in 2025. The grind and overlay portion will then come in 2026 as a separate grant application, because it looks better if you do part of it for the bike lane sidewalks, then move forward with the grind and overlay project. They're more apt to allocate those funds for those projects. So this just kind of gives a breakdown. You can see the city match portion, and that's what's built into our street fund from the contributions from the general. So the next slide, this shows the ending fund balance for the water. I don't know, Todd, if you want to touch base on this, but
Yeah, so this is what we talked about, and this is where we had the discussion about maintaining our current water rates. This assumes no rate increase, which was passed by council. And we have a slight decrease here we're now paying the Reservoir 4 and the Filter 2 and 3 loans in 2025. So, and that has been built into the budget here.
Yeah, and a good kicker off this too is when we were talking about the assessment charges, all those assessment fees are all going into reserves. So we have it allocated now to where anything that comes through for new buildings, water, wastewater, all goes into our reserve funds. So that's not touched or allocated in any way throughout the year. So next slide. So this just kind of shows a breakdown. Obviously, you can see 58.1% is water sales. We brought over a beginning fund balance. The total revenue of 38.4. So it's just gives a good eyesight on where the money's coming from. I don't think there's really anything out of the ordinary on there. We are accruing new water on and off fees due to the lock-offs that we started back in March. So that's where you're getting the $20,000 because there is an on and off fee when we disconnect and reconnect customers now. So next slide, water revenues. We went very conservative on our water revenues. We basically went off of our 2024 budget. Obviously, we're not increasing water rates. And we have some new developments coming in, but we wanted to make sure that we projected our revenues low so we weren't over projecting for a deficit for 2025. Other than that, everything's pretty normal on the revenue side due to no utility rate changes. So this is the expenditures. There's kind of a lot going on here. One of the big kicks is to notate that the charges to the general fund, the $264,000, that is a utility tax on the enterprise funds of the water of a 10.87% total gross revenue. So that is what gets transferred then into the general fund and then gets distributed out. Another big one to notate on here is the reservoir, $832,000. That is where we start paying into our every October. We pay our reservoir loan funds plus our interest. We have $200,000 set aside for rainy well cleaning. We're going to put $200,000 aside every single year until we get into do the rainy well cleaning. That is a rotating cleaning that needs to be done every 5 or so years. So we want to make sure that we have funds allocated for that and built into the budget every year.
That's runs about $800,000 each time we do that. So planning for the future.
Yes. So next slide. So we're going to bring ending fund balance. We'll bring over approximately $1.2 million from 2024 to 2025. Salary increases there that'll be addressed in the budget for salaries for next year. Let's go down here. So another one I kind of want to bring up here is the operating supplies at the water treatment plant. You can see that in 2024 it was budgeted for $8,800, and then I have it budgeted for $190,000 for this next year. That was actually a miscalculation from the 2024 budget. That is for all plant chemical supplies, things of that nature. That was a oversight from the 2024 budget that's now being corrected for 2025. So those funds were reallocated into other areas of the water fund that will then be zeroed out at the end of the year. So it's kind of a little bit cattywampus there, but obviously number one operating cost is chemicals for the water plant. Moving down, if you go to R&M distribution, you will see there is $181,000 for this year over what it was budgeted for 2024. That is for a clear well pump of $25,000, and then there's actually $90,000 built in there for the new Badger meter contract. So that is where we are going to the funds for the new Badger meters. getting everything automated, getting rid of the old manual read meters. So that's all built into that budget. There's obviously the extra is built in there for issues with distribution and things like that. Let's see here. Is there any questions or anything on that side of things?
Last line, what is a rents and leases?
Rents and leases is where we get into like man lifts or anything.
Oh,
We just
okay.
rented a man lift and cleaned reservoir number 3, so that's what comes out of that line
Okay,
item.
just wondered. Curious.
So the next one, water expenditures continued. Kind of the biggest one there, if you look at the principal for the reservoir, you'll see another 516,000, which was allocated in 2025 compared to 2024. Like I said, every October we have to make a payment to Drinking Water State Revolving Fund with that and the interest on that loan also. So that's another big thing for making sure we're setting money aside for the rainy well cleaning so we don't incur any more loan costs. So that's about it on that. Is there any other questions for water? Perfect. Next slide. So this also shows the ending fund balance for the sewer fund. Again, that's all of our assessment charges are all allocated into there as our bank, basically.
And when we get to the next slide, you'll see why our sewer fund goes down $2 million.
Yeah. We go to the next slide. Big thing here, beginning fund balance 6.86%. That's just a carryover. Sewer sales 30.4, which equate to 2.2 million. No increase in cost there because our rates are staying the same. Next slide. Okay, so we have pretty much everything is status quo on this. We do not have the 690,000 that we're transferring from the sewer utility reserves. That was already allocated in 2024 for the biosolids tank for part of that cost. If you go to the second one, you'll go to expenditures. This kind of gives a breakdown. One thing to note on this is the repairs and maintenance of the 2.4, almost 2.5 million. That is for the biosolids tank, for the decant facility, engineering and construction. That's kind of where the biggest costs of where reserves are kind of in a little bit of a downward angle there. But that was all allocated in 2024, but will be then spent in 2025.
So that explains why our sewer fund, which is a very healthy fund, is going to come down. No loan is needed, and we can take care of the biofacilities. Okay.
And you will notice on there too, professional services, 270,000. Again, that is engineering for the decant facility, biosolids tank, and that's how those costs are allocated. General fund is allocated at a 12.5% on the sewer fund. That's 350,000 that the sewer fund allocates to the general each year. Next slide. So this is pretty status quo. One thing to note, the professional services on this category, the 250,000, 180,000 of that is not allocated for engineering services. That is actually for collections, TV, and cleaning assessments. So our sewer collection system is very old, needs a lot of work, needs some lining work done to it. In order to build a bigger project scope, we need to, one, get in there, get our collection system cleaned out. We've separated the individual portions of the city into thirds, and then we'll contract with a company to go in, do the cleaning of those lines, do a TV inspection, see where we have I&I issues, really get an overall idea of our collection system and where in the future we need to put funds to kind of help with our I&I issues or any kind of downfalls we have in our collection system. Our collection system is a very old system and needs some work, and this is the first way we kind of go about identifying those troublesome areas. All right, next slide. So this is pretty status quo. We have that Equipment for sewer, 53,000. That again is down from last year in 2024, but that is to contribute to the street 3-yard bed attachment. And there's a few things that we can bill out of sewer and water to help the street department with water and sewer funding. So.
And with that, that is our proposed 2025 budget. The takeaway items here, I will work on the Mayleen's position to get that there taken out. We'll have those dollars. I will move those over to the police department so that we can see what their budget would look like with Axon. And then I will add the $33,000 into the budget for watering so that we can see what it is. Again, if we don't water, we'll have it, but at least we can have a full picture of what it would look like to water. I mean, $33,000, I don't want that to be a showstopper here, so I mean, I'll sharpen my pencil or something for $33,000 to move that through. And those are the action items that I have taken from this workshop. Is there anything from council, the community, before we leave workshop and go into the public hearing? But is there anything on the budget where you say, ooh, I don't like that? Other things you say, ooh, I do like that? Thoughts, comments from anyone online, public, or council?
I appreciate the balanced budget, and I appreciate the colored charts and pie charts. That is a great improvement.
It is.
And it's really helpful to the public to be able to understand it. That's a great, very good job.
Great job, team.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
They're laughing over there because a lot of these, and I would send them the file, I say, don't touch it. I have your stuff in there, and so that's why they're sitting there laughing. So, great job, team.
I'm gonna touch it.
Yeah.
Tell me not to touch it, I'm gonna touch it.
I'm gonna touch it. So,
I would like to see that our, where we are spending for tourism
LTAC?
is, yes, our LTAC money is equivalent to what we're getting in and not over what we're getting in. So if we're getting in 60, we're spending 60.
Have we approved that yet?
So,
No, we haven't approved anything. You
Usually-
don't approve it until you approve the budget.
yeah. So let's walk through the process here. So this is workshop, and right now, I'm not proposing, unless somebody here at council says, I think we
Right.
need to have an interim, another workshop. Next council meeting, I would come back, present the budget with the changes, where we could have the dialogue and conversation. If there's no issues there, then we would have a first round of the budget, in the first week of December. And that is where you would do our reading, and that's where the first approval would come, and then the second approval would come on the 18th of December, and we would fully submit our budget. So LTAC, how this works is the LTAC committee recommended their recommendation, and it was put in here for it to go back to council, or back to LTAC committee, would be at that first reading, where we would kick it back. Council would say, nope, we don't approve of this budget. It needs to go back to LTAC and get adjusted to 60 to the 70,000. So
Okay, so that's not for today. Okay.
Go ahead, Carol.
Well, I was just gonna say, I'd like to see it stay because it's heads and beds. You're talking about having people come here. If we don't get enough money in next year, we can cut them back. But we need to spend the money to get heads and beds this year.
I would agree.
So, I'd as soon see it stay where it's at.
That's one.
Okay, so I'm hearing here, so, I mean, well, obviously, we're gonna leave the 70,000 spent in there, because that's what's come forward from the committee. And then when we get to the first reading of the budget in December, if council, if you all take a vote and come back, we can do that and we can set up another piece. So for right now, I will leave that in there. I appreciate the comment. But, okay? Any other comments, thoughts here? Anything from staff before we leave workshop? Okay, the time is now 9 p.m. and we are leaving workshop and going back into our regular meeting. The time is now 9 p.m. and we're going to go into public hearing. Ordinance number 1565, 2025 property tax proposal to not increase tax by 1%. Citizen comment. Anyone online that would like to comment about 1% tax increase or not increasing the 1% for property taxes?
Okay. I think it's a good idea not to increase the taxes because the way the economy is, with the water bills the way they are, I think it's just a good idea not to put that extra stress on the citizens of the community. So I like the idea that we're not doing it.
I agree.
Good
I also
management.
agree with that, and I think we've proven a budget without an increase, so why do we need to increase it?
Right.
Douglas or Terry?
Good, I said good management, yeah.
Okay.
So do you make a motion to approve it?
Nope, we go into action items. So this is, and then also part of the public hearing, the preliminary budget is there. That goes back to what we did in workshop. This is where citizens have an opportunity to yay, nay, rip it apart, say yay. Any comments from citizens online or in the audience?
I think you've done a great job, all of you.
Thank you. Great job, team. Okay, any other comments from council in public hearing? Anything from citizens? It is now 9:02 and we will leave public hearing and we'll go back into regular city council meeting. Reports of city council.
Our high schools have done really good with sports. We have our football team who has their first after postseason game Friday night at home. So they went undefeated in league season. So they are playing at home against Cedar Crest. Cedar Crest. Volleyball varsity plays kind of a pigtail match tomorrow night up against Black Hills. And if they win tomorrow night, they start Thursday night in districts, which is held at home. All of district tournaments is at home for volleyball. And we have two that made districts or state for cross country. So so we have some really good athletes that did really well. So I think the girls won too this weekend for soccer on Saturday, so they will keep playing. So a lot of postseason games going on with the high school for fall sports. So doing really well. And then I also want to just thank all of our veterans in town as we come upon Veterans Weekend. So, and even those that work for our city and our council that are veterans. So.
Yeah, so Make a Difference Day was since last council meeting and got an opportunity with my family to go help and volunteer in a community member's lawn with some stuff they needed done. And just an awesome job to everybody that helped coordinate that. It was really well put together. Assignments were there. I think Riley mentioned in our meeting that even some local businesses donated things, so it's just really great, and it seemed like a good turnout too.
Yeah, I would like to echo that. 75 roughly citizens. Everybody that asked to have things done on their house were done. It was pouring down rain. Again, the Grange had things done there. Lilac Gardens actually ran out of materials from having individuals there. Safeway, Starbucks contributed the food and things. So again, great turnout. I would say I appreciate everything from the community and the city employees who put that on together. Any other? Okay. Standing committees, Public Works.
Yeah, so I'll be reporting for Public Works. Met at 6 o'clock this evening. That was Riley, Councilmember Frymark, myself, and a few things that came up. We did some lead and copper sampling. It was completed with 30 samples for some of the older homes in the community. Everything came back within compliance, so no concerns with lead or copper leaching into water. We had no water quality complaints in the month of October. A sanitary survey was completed by the Department of Health and no significant findings were reported. This is an every 3-year survey that's done, so everything was good on that. On the waterfront, for sewer, on October 31st, during the Halloween celebration, there was a blockage between Lift Station 3 and a manhole, and the city staff worked quick to get it cleared. It was kind of a chaotic time with everything already happening downtown, and then to have a blockage, so great job to the crews that got that cleared out. And then you'll notice on the east side of the freeway, the treatment area and the shop were painted, so just a better looking setup now from for those office for the office building and I guess the office and the shop. South Pekin and 5th, that paving project is also complete now, and we have a contractor just working on the final punch list items to wrap that up. And Riley kind of mentioned this, but there are 4 grant applications out right now, which were the completion of South Pekin to the city limits, the sidewalks on Pacific and Atlantic, and Davidson, and we'll be notified in November if we receive those grants. That was it.
Any questions from council or the community? Anything else you want to throw in, Riley?
Nope, I just want to do a shout out to the crew. They worked hard to get that resolved on October 31st. That was a pretty big issue, and you get people in the community, you've probably seen us out there with flashing lights and the road blocked for a short period of time, and just want to give those guys a big shout out. They did a great job.
Absolutely. This was right after trick-or-treating ended, and they literally were out there. So, 100% agree.
Can we take 5 minutes?
Yeah. Next item is reports to city officers. Mayor's report. I'll make it really quick. I just have a couple things. Make sure and vote. This is all of our right. We're not here to tell you who to vote for or how to vote, but again, as citizens and as an elected official here, please vote. Nothing more important for tomorrow, and I would echo Veterans Day. I appreciate JJ everything you do, and any other veterans in the room as I look here. So thank you for your service.
Is there a veterans thing going on, do you know?
Yeah.
Oh, a parade or something?
No, not a parade, but
Probably
is anyone putting on,
It's up to DFW. What?
There's a parade in
Parade in
Vancouver.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So,
And there's free dinner at, No Plane.
okay. And then coming up, Veterans Day, the 11th next week, city offices will be closed for that. City council meeting is the 18th in 2 weeks. That was where we'll continue on with the budget. And then on the 21st of November, there is a planning commission meeting. All right? With that, it is 9:08 and we're going to take a 5-minute break.
milk chocolate, not dark chocolate. M&M's? Sure. Oh! He got it for me.
I'm trying to quit.
I've had 5 today. You trying to quit and you had 5? Oh yeah, that's good.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
They've got a couple hundred full-size candy bars in the back. I bought 1,500 and went through 1,100 of them.
Where's your community?
On Main Street, I sat and I gave out about 1,100.
That's unreal.
What?
My kids wouldn't wait in line to go to the fire station. They're like, Dad, it's like a half mile.
I didn't go. I was in the fire station.
Oh, were you in?
I literally stood out in the rain. Riley and I. Riley held an umbrella. I was throwing out full-size candy bars.
1,500 candy bars.
Yeah, I bought 1,500.
You don't go to Costco?
I bought them at Costco. About $1,300.
It's ever got to be about a pound full of them? I mean, that's.
No, I mean there's 30 in a piece, so there was like 50 of them.
Yeah, I bought 30 candy bars because I have kids. One year I bought them when they had like clearance sections and they were like a quarter to 50 cents a big candy bar. So I bought a bunch of them because my kids always have friends over Halloween.
JJ, you got 1 minute.
And then I pass them out. So now every year, certain kids come to my house looking for that big candy bar. So I at least have to have 1 box.
I gave them to the police officers to give out, and so they actually, one of the officers sat at the corner of Hillshire and what's that first street? Loganberry? Is it Loganberry or Sycamore? One of those.
Loganberry.
And literally did traffic, put their lights on, so that with the pouring down rain, with the cars coming in there. I think, so that was Chris Shock. He was like, really?
We had
JJ. JJ.
JJ.
It's 5 minutes.
You asked for 5. Let's go.
It is now 9:13 and we are back into city council.
Okay.
Moving into consent items.
Move to approve the consent item. A.
Second.
Any comments or questions about the minutes?
Nope.
Okay.
Good.
Carrie?
Sure. Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Frymark,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
and Councilmember Friend.
Aye.
With that, we will move into the action items. Action item E, approve the vouchers. So, as we have this discussion, there is attached to it the summary of the vouchers. This was our first month using Tyler Tech. So, I apologize that every single check is not attached to all those to sit there and go boom, boom, boom. That is on me. I take accountability. We need to get the checks out for the first half of the month. This is part of the growing pains of going to a new system. So, but the summary is attached to the meeting. So, I apologize for anyone that doesn't see them. We're doing our best. So, sorry. Okay.
Make a motion to approve action item E.
Second.
Approve vouchers.
Sorry. Oh, yes.
I
You already
said
got a
second.
I have a second. Comments, questions? Carrie?
Councilmember Friend,
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke,
Aye. Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
and Councilmember Frymark.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Moving into action item F, Ordinance number 1435, prohibited camping, second and final reading.
Motion
Move to-
to approve?
Second?
Any comments, questions from the community, anyone online about this? Any discussion from council?
About time.
No discussion, I heard a first and a second. Carrie?
Councilmember Frymark.
Aye.
Councilmember Burke.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall.
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Friend.
Aye.
And Councilmember Dowdy.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Moving into action item G, ordinance number 1434, panhandling, second and final reading. Anything from the community or online? Hearing none.
Make a motion to approve
approve.
action item G, ordinance number 1434.
Second.
I hear a first and a second. Any conversation up here on council? Carrie?
Councilmember Burke.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall.
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy.
Aye.
Councilmember Friend.
Aye.
Councilmember Frymark.
Aye.
And Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Moving into action item H, ordinance number 1565, not to increase property tax by 1%. First reading. Any
Move to approve.
comments from the community or anyone online?
Nope, they're not gonna argue. Move to approve.
Second.
Any conversation from council?
Anybody see the $1.2 billion figure in there? Okay. If their figures are correct.
That's total value of the property of the
Yeah,
land.
total.
Yep.
Councilmember Friend.
Aye.
Councilmember Frymark.
Aye.
Councilmember Burke.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall.
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
And Councilmember Dowdy.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Motion to end meeting?
Second.
And with that is at 9:17. Have a great night. I gave them a comprehensive package where they're not gonna get anything better. Okay, where you get a 4.5% is what is there, but then we move people around to where they really need to get into butts and seats. Why is it not downloaded to the PC? Oh, here it is. Okay. So, what's that?
Yeah, I stumbled for a second. Hey, what am I saying? What page again?
You ready? So I gave them an offer. Dawn is otherwise there's a 2% raise because she's at the top and her job classification is so poor. When I compare it with all the other markets, doesn't need to be raised everywhere. And I'm not doing everybody gets more than 5%. No, some will get more, but at the end of the day, it's on average. And she said, no, 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 no. there's stuff for me to sign?
Yes.
Yes? Oh, yeah, those things.
Hey, Travis?
Yes.
This doesn't have the date and everything in here. What am I supposed to do?
So there's, you will need to sign that one.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. I appreciate that, Carrie. I guess I can. And then this is the ordinance that will go into. Oh, she has to notarize this.
Oh, I can notarize. Oh, Amanda has to.
I'm a Democrat. And I'm sorry, those are first readings.
No, this one here is final reading, camping, and this one here is first reading. So this one comes back for a second reading next council meeting. And these here have to be notarized. Don't they have to be? Yeah. Oh, no, they don't.
No, they have to just be signed by her.
It's so quiet in there, my friend, isn't it? That's what I said. Trish and Carrie are, I mean, that's why I thanked them, and they're carrying the weight. That goes. This
Which I
goes.
love.
That's her, that's not me.
I'll not come in.
Huh?
I'll stay away. I love the people that come in. It's good. Rick Pettit came in
He did one day.
because he loves me. Doug Swire went and got dog food, and then he's like, I haven't seen Carrie at Chamber, and Doug's like, she looks